So the Eagles won their second Lombardi trophy. Here's a reminder of last season's playoff bracket. How does it tie into this season? Well, every playoff game from the 2024 divisional round, conference championship, and Super Bowl is a rematch in 2025. Pretty cool. Dan, take us through some of the best ones here.
I think the rematch of Week 16 and Week 18, the fact that the Eagles and Commanders don't play each other till Week 16.
Is that right?
And then they go twice in a matter of 3 weeks. Oh. And I think the question is going to be, is Washington's defense any better equipped to handle Philadelphia's offense in their run game? There's some additions. Kinlaw, they draft Trey Amos. Is Lattimore healthy? But the fact that they don't play each other till late and then twice in 3 weeks, fascinating.
Healthy. One of the best draft picks in this draft.
I'm watching the trailer for The Kingdom, which is the new Chiefs doc, and you want to say it's the last dance, but gosh, it didn't end that way. The Eagles embarrassed the Chiefs in their three-peat quest. They embarrassed them on the biggest of stages. Now we go to Arrowhead week 2, and we could do the Kelsey Bowl, and we could do Andy Reid and all that stuff. No. They were the teams that squashed their opportunity for being the first team ever to three-peat.
I like it.
There's so much drama in these rematches. As much as it feels like it's a while away, I get it, but still, it's going to be very real when these teams end up playing. Let's talk about some other notable games that are for the defending champs. You're going to see their schedule right here. They open the season against the Cowboys on Thursday night in Week 1, the first time since 2000 that they'll play Dallas in the season opener. The NFC East rivals will play at AT&T Stadium in Week 12. Now, the Eagles welcome the Rams to Philly in Week 3. That, of course, a rematch of last season's divisional round game.
Awesome game.
So good. That was the closest game the Eagles played during their playoff run, beating LA 28-22, thanks to that, remember the defensive
Smack that helmet.
Final minute, right? It could be a potential NFC Championship preview in Week 11. The Eagles hosting the Lions here. They were the top 2 seeds in the conference last season. This is their first meeting since Week 1 of the 2022 season when the Eagles won 38-35 in Detroit. Adam, when you think about all of these opportunities as you see their full schedule right now for the Eagles, what sticks out to you about their quest to repeat this?
Well, a couple of things. They don't play 2 straight home games the entire season. So take a look at the Eagles' schedule. They're not home in back-to-back weeks at all. 2 of their last 3 games of the season are against the Commanders. At Washington in Week 16, sandwiched by a game at Buffalo, not an easy place, finishing at home against the Washington Commanders. Now, today, the division would figure to come down to those 2 teams who met up in the NFC Championship game last year. Well, they're going to see each other twice in the final 3 weeks, but not until Week 16, which is wild to think about.
Crazy.
You know what's interesting to me is that right now in the NFL, the better you are, the more versatile you better be as a football team. The only day of the week that the Eagles don't play on are Tuesday and Wednesday. They play on Monday, they play on Thursday, they play on Friday, they play on Saturday, they play on Sunday. So there's got to be a great flexibility organizationally, head coach, leadership, team-wise, that you can kind of maneuver how you go about your week and how you prepare and how you get ready to play games. That's a lot to throw at football teams.
How do you manage that, Lewis? I mean, like trying to make sure that your schedule is what it needs to be. That's a very real thing when you don't have as much time to prepare, or maybe you have a little bit more time you can take advantage of.
Yeah, it's about time management on the part of the head coach. I mean, he just has to be on top of it. The leadership of the football team has to be on top of it, making sure guys are getting their rest, getting in their playbook. You got to keep guys fresh, so you can't have them burn out. They have to have some consistency. But when I look at this schedule, thinking like, what is the number one thing that worries you about the Eagles this year? Or rather, what's the number one question, right?
The coordinators.
Well, to me, I think it's this. It's about the depth on the defensive line, right?
Yep. Sure.
So look at those first 4 games. And look at those teams. Look, Cowboys tried to really address their offensive line.
Yep.
Okay, you figure they're going to run the foot. The Chiefs have addressed their offensive line.
Right.
The Rams can run the ball as good as anyone. And the Buccaneers, they're going to find out right away, hey, has our depth really been hit on this defensive line? Are we still the same team from a year ago? Because I think everywhere else, linebacker, secondary, offensive line, skill positions, they're still fine. It's the defensive line depth that took the biggest hit. They're going to get tested early right out of the gate.
Let me go off of that as well. If you guys put the beginning of that schedule back up, remember, this is a defense that no longer has Darius Slay. So who's going to play corner opposite Quinion Mitchell?
Evans.
And now the Dallas Cowboys have CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. We obviously know the Chiefs in their pass game. Then you're going Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams. You're going Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, McMillan, we'll see. That's a stretch of duo at wide receiver.
Remember last year, the Eagles got hot. They didn't start out of the gates well last year.
No, they started terrible.
They lost to Tampa. So how are you going to start? That is not an easy slate to start. Everyone just penciling in the Eagles?
No question. Those first 4 games right there.
Hard.
And just remember this name. You know how I like to throw out draft pick names there.
Let's hear
after,
it.
Right?
7th round?
How about, no, this is was Makuba drafted in the 3rd?
I think 3rd or 4th. Yeah.
Remember
Texas
that name.
And Clemson.
Probably one of the most exciting defensive backs in this draft. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Makuba's a clone of him. That's exactly what he brings, that kind of hard-hitting mentality.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw the hit that he had in the SEC title game.
He's unreal. He's also got a lot of experience playing at Clemson and at Texas.
There you go.
He's certainly been around. Cowboys, Eagles. Here's a look at some of the biggest moves that each team made. The Cowboys had a very quiet free agency, but they traded for George Pickens and then added guard Tyler Booker in the draft, pass rusher Donovan Ezeraku, corner Siobhan Rebel, and Eagles, they saw a bunch of key defensive players like Milton Williams and Josh Sweat leave in free agency. They did add linebacker Jahad Campbell and safety Andrew Makuba in the draft, and they brought in Adoree Jackson and Azeez Ojulari in free agency. We wondered how the Eagles specifically would fill a lot of voids. Well, the Cowboys too. But Mina, let's start with the Eagles adding youth on the defense as they lost 4 starters from that group that won the Super Bowl. And then when you see the ads for the Cowboys offense, how will it change what they're doing when these teams face off to open the season?
Yeah, I think that the Cowboys offense closed the gap on that side of the ball. We can talk about the other side of the ball where I'm a little bit more apprehensive of how they match up with Philadelphia. But I think offensively, this Cowboys offense really improved, and I think they're going to be able to field a more balanced attack. You know, when they drafted Tyler Booker 12th overall, I had mixed feelings. Part of me loved the pick because this is a team that has drafted really well on the offensive line. It's been a focus of them, philosophy. They have a young group that got to play together last year, so there's continuity, which Damian knows the importance of. But I also felt like, dang, like really? No wide receivers for Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb getting double teamed. Then you go out and bring George Pickens, and suddenly it feels like the plan came together. Because of those receivers, they're going to face lighter boxes. They're going to be able to run the football better, I think, than they did last year. And it's going to be a handful for this Eagles defense, as good as they were last season.
Yeah, Mina, you touched upon it. I think the real key for the Dallas Cowboys is how well their offensive line comes together. This is a young unit. They've invested a lot of draft capital into this offensive line. And so we saw them struggle last year. But I think as, you know, with continuity, those guys start to trust each other and start playing better. And I think for this whole thing to come together for the Dallas Cowboys on offense, the offensive line and that rushing attack is going to be the key. Because last year, the Dallas Cowboys were 27th in rushing. I think that's too, you know, you don't want to be too top-heavy going, especially going up against a team like the Philadelphia Eagles. So if this offensive line comes together, boy, they have something cooking in Dallas.
And remember, the biggest upgrade the Cowboys will make on offense is the return to health of their starting quarterback, Dak Prescott, who missed the second half of last season with an injury. When he's been healthy, they have generally been a good team. 6 seasons in the NFL that he has finished fully healthy. They've won the division in 4 of them. So they believe that that'll be a big help regardless of what else they did. But yes, Brian Schottenheimer, now the head coach, overseeing the offense. His mandate is to get that run game functioning better. They think the draft pick of Tyler Booker will help. They've added a couple pieces at the running back position in free agency, but they could still poke around. There are potential trades out there, so they'll keep their eyes open for that. But yes, the George Pickens addition gives them the number 2 wide receiver they were looking for since the start of the offseason. Mina, I believe if Teteroa McMillan had still been there at 12, he's probably their pick. But since he wasn't, they went with the guy in Tyler Booker, who they had ranked as their top offensive lineman in the entire draft.
Yeah, a reminder that Dak Prescott missed both of the games against the Eagles last season, so certainly this Cowboys team looks a lot different with him at the helm. Mina, when you look at the Eagles offense, the biggest change, new offensive coordinator Kevin Patullo, who they promoted from within. Now, the last time they did that, of course, it didn't go well. This, by the way, Jalen Hurts' 12th play caller in 10 years. What's key for the Eagles to be more successful this time around?
Yeah, well, you know, on one hand, calling plays for this Eagles offense is not exactly rocket science. You got a top 3 or better offensive line, top 3 running back, top 3 wide receiver duo. You got an extremely good quarterback in Jalen Hurts, Super Bowl MVP. It's not exactly reinventing the wheel. But as you alluded to, Laura, the last time they had that change and in terms of an offensive coordinator leaving for a head coaching opportunity, it didn't go well with their Brian Johnson, who was offensive coordinator after Shane Steichen. It felt like he kind of hit copy-paste and didn't really develop or evolve the offense the way we saw last year with Kellen Moore, some tweaks, giving Jalen Hurts more answers versus the blitz, some of the evolution of the run game. So I think for Kevin Patullo, it really comes down to you don't have to make wholesale changes, but you do have to continue growing and game plan specific changes, integrating new personnel here and there. And I think those little tweaks, particularly in season, are going to be key to whether or not the Eagles can get back to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, listen, this is the biggest thing I'm watching for with the Philadelphia Eagles. Listen, I don't expect wholesale changes offensively because, you know, when you have the personnel that the Philadelphia Eagles have, there's no reason to do that. But every offensive coordinator have their own way of calling plays. And so that bears watching. And I think the biggest thing when you talk about a new offensive coordinator is how well they adjust in game. I think that's the biggest thing that we're going to see, how well, you know, from series to series, half to half, how well, you know, the new offensive coordinator will be able to adjust. I think that's going to go a long way to kind of ease and maybe some concerns going into the season on that side of the ball.
Again, Thursday, September 4th, it kicks off the 2025 NFL season between the Cowboys and Eagles. By the way, ESPN Bet has the line out for week 1. Eagles, early 7-point favorites. They are the defending Super Bowl champs.
The Eagles may not be able to trade for a top defender. He felt disrespected by his coach and put words to the disrespect he felt by what his coach said. He said, "I wasn't an elite corner and that I'm not in their category," the player said about the coach. That didn't stop the Eagles from hiring that coach as a senior defensive consultant in 2023, Matt Patricia. How would the player, Darius Slay, feel about Patricia, who would eventually replace Sean Desai in season as defensive coordinator? It was Patricia who said Slay wasn't elite when he was the head coach in Detroit when Slay was there. It turned out fine. The two men made nice. Could a similar dynamic be in play if the Eagles trade for cornerback Jalen Ramsey, who the Miami Dolphins really want to deal with Philly being mentioned as a possible destination? The situation in some ways is similar to Slay Patricia, except it's the player, Ramsey, who took issue with his then defensive coordinator, Vic Fangio. Fangio spent a year in South Florida helping turn the Dolphins' defense into a top 10 unit in that one season. Ramsey seemed to throw shade Fangio's way after the Dolphins released fellow cornerback Xavier Howard in February of 2024, just weeks after the Eagles hired Fangio as their DC. "I won't ever forgive dude for not utilizing our full skillet," Ramsey posted in a social media farewell to Howard. There are some who believe Ramsey wasn't happy with Fangio because he didn't let him cover the opponent's #1 receiver. Ramsey missed the first 7 games of their only season together, but returned for the final 10 and had 3 interceptions. Ramsey is 4 years younger than Slay, the cornerback the Eagles let leave to the Steelers during the offseason. He's also much more expensive than Slay. He signed a 3-year extension worth $72.1 million with the Dolphins just last September, and his salary cap charges are ridiculously high, $16.6 million this year, $25 million in 2026, $26.8 million in 2026, 2027, and $36.1 in 2028 when Ramsey will be 34. This is where a deal probably falls apart for the Eagles. Unless Miami is willing to eat most of the money, then it may be too prohibitive. If the Dolphins do eat money, that would probably make the deal sweeter in terms of what they would get back in a trade. The Eagles have draft collateral with an expected 13 picks in next year's draft. What Philly doesn't have is the money to afford anything near that contract with some of their own players coming up for new deals. Another complication is that the Eagles have a group of young cornerbacks they need to find out about, such as Keely Ringo and Eli Ricks.